All right, welcome into another episode of T-Dub's Film Room and Auburn Football Podcast, although this will probably be just in video form. So what we're going to do today is what I've done previously for like signing day breakdowns and also, of course, the transfer portal. So you can just think of this as like talent acquisition breakdown video. So the way I've done it in the past is we've kind of broken down into two categories mainly. So we're going to look at all the transfers and the high school signees, and we're going to try to put them into categories. And so the two main categories that we work with here are maybes and players or dudes. And so essentially all I'm saying is if I'm to think about their projection and at their time at Auburn, would I bet money that they would become impact players at Auburn during their time, whether it's 1 year for a transfer guy potentially, or 4 or 5 years for somebody else, and we're talking development? Am I unsure? Are they in the maybe category, or in there like are they in the players category? Which again I'd make a bet on. So I've got you can kind of see some of what I've got here. Of course, their height, weight, listing. I've got positions, all that kind of stuff. I've got their pluses, their minuses, and I've got their comps, so their comparisons. So don't want to show too much of that, and I've got some superlatives down at the end. But we're going to start here. It is in kind of chronological order, I guess, from least sure to most sure. So we're going to start here with Eric Smith, and we're going to pull up his highlights and kind of go through it. All right, so we'll let this thing run a little bit here. We can see Tony Stevens, his comp, Eric Smith. So look, if you're watching this, you probably know this is Derek Smith. This is his brother, and so of course, there's some of that there where maybe we were kind of helping out getting Derek. Bringing in Eric Smith as a guy that can hopefully develop into a quality player. That last play there was a play that I did kind of latch onto though. He shows like a decent amount of burst on this particular play, and then of course just like high pointing the ball, contested catch, that kind of thing. For the most part, his highlight tape is just full of him being like taller than everybody else, throwing up go routes, maybe running past people, maybe lower competition, that kind of thing, being at Selma. So look, he's at the kind of the bottom of my list in terms of guys that I'm most sure about becoming an impact player at Auburn. He's got a lot of length, a lot of things you do like as a receiver, but I'm just projecting him as a guy who's going to need a lot of development. His pluses, of course, are his length, and he's got decent hands. His minuses are just the fact that he doesn't really have like an elite trait, I guess you could say. His comp for me, his comparison is going to be Tony Stevens light. Tony Stevens was a pretty good contributor at Auburn, had a lot of length, that kind of thing. So I think some kind of light version of Tony Stevens is a pretty good comp for him. So that's Eric Smith out of Selma High School leading us off here. All right, next we've got Mason Murphy, transfer offensive tackle from USC. I'm going to let this thing play a little bit. We got right tackle right here, I think number 76. So again, we're kind of doing this least sure to most sure, right, in terms of guys who I'm projecting making an impact at Auburn. So when you have guys that are 1 year guys, you kind of have to play that into account here, because they're not going to have that long to develop or that long to make an impact. Now, as I kind of roll this thing forward, I mean, he's not like a bad player. We've got Xavier Too Tall Miller presumably coming back here. I think he's on the roster, and I'll kind of skip this forward a little bit, but I don't USC fans and stuff. He was pretty high rated offensive tackle transfer. I think he was kind of rated as a 4-star there on 3. USC fans, if you go try to look at boards or just different things, you can see him kind of getting out on the backside there. A lot of penalties, like here he is again, kind of getting out for that front side of the read option there. But penalties, false starts, that kind of thing, people kind of chirping about not being too upset about losing Mason Murphy, but I think he's fine. His plus for me is, and he's 6'5", 315 or whatever, so good size. His plus for me is his experience. I mean, he's played a lot of football. You can see him kind of, climb and then redirect on the screen, and he's pretty fleet, for a guy. That's pretty good right there. Again, I don't think he's a bad player. I've watched the USC LSU game from last year, as well as this game, which is the Notre Dame game at the end of the year, trying to like compare and contrast there. There he is, big number 76, getting out front on the screen. Look, his minuses are, is he going to be able to deal with SEC rushers? Watching again the two probably best teams that they competed against last year with LSU and Notre Dame. Of course, he struggles a little bit. tackles are going to lose one-on-one battles at times. That's just part of it. Do I think he's great at any one particular thing? Not necessarily. He's probably better as a run blocker. His comp to me is Chad Slade, who actually was an interior guy. That's something kind of interesting there. Maybe he could play some guard for us potentially. So I don't think he's necessarily locked at tackle, but I think maybe Chad Slade. I think Cam Stutz is like kind of another decent comparison here. But 76, look, it's great for depth. It's awesome. Got two really good tackles in terms of the transfer portal rankings, and obviously we'll talk about Xavier Chapman later. But I think it's great that we picked him up. It's just 1 year guy. Not totally sure he's going to start every game all year, so it's kind of hard to say that he's like a super impactful player. But I do think it's a guy that it's really good that we got. So here's 76 there, just firing off the ball. So not a terrible player at all, and I think it's really good pickup for us. All right, next on the list, we got Ty Buster, who's an interior offensive lineman out of Buford, Georgia. So I've got 6'4", 290. We can see him here with the nice dreadlocks there, being really mean to a poor lad there. So 6'4", 290, his plus for me is athleticism. You can see him lining up at left tackle, and he actually competed at left tackle in the it was one of the Carolina, and that's an absolute decleater. One of the Carolina like postseason bowl type deals. Competed at left tackle and got some decent recognition there. 6'4", 290. Again, projected interior offensive lineman. You can see how athletic he is. I mean, he's super light on his feet. He plays, really, I guess you would say mean or like competitive, obviously. And so again, athleticism. His minuses for me is just like size and strength. You can tell how slender he looks. I mean, it looks like a defensive end, and just uncertainty about his position. Again, all projections kind of have him as an interior offensive lineman. I think he even maybe played a little bit of center, or maybe the coaches were looking at him at that point. But I mean, you can see how athletic he is. His comparison was so hard just because you want to kind of see who he reminds you of, just as you'd say a football player. First off, he looks like Stanley McClover. Again, I mean, it looks like a defensive end. Again, nobody's really like jumping off to me in terms of like somebody he reminds me of. Most of our interior offensive linemen that you would, think about projecting a guy to have been really heavy footed in like the Gus Malzahn days, a little bit more power scheme. So, it's kind of hard. You don't have a, Mike Berry, Byron Isom, comparison there. He's just, super athletic. So I don't really know who to compare him to in terms of like an Auburn comp. But I'm excited to see him develop. He's this low on the list. Offensive linemen that aren't, 5 stars, they're going to be kind of maybes for me in general, just out of principle. It's a developmental position. You'll kind of see that on the next few guys as well. But I do really like this pickup, and I think he's definitely got just as good a shot as anybody of becoming a player, an impact player at Auburn. So excited about the pickup. All right, next we've got Jacoby Ward, who's an inside offensive lineman, listed at 6'4", 340, huge guy, Benedictine out of Georgia. I'm going to hit play here. So this is his teammates' highlight tape. This is Jacoby Ward right here, left tackle. It's big number 72, okay? This teammates' highlight tape, like Jacoby doesn't have any, he has one highlight from his senior year, so it's like pointless to even watch it. This guy right here, though, I will say it's nice to just, nice to know, 2026 receiver Bubba Frazier, who Auburn is recruiting. But we can see Jacoby Ward, he's massive compared to all of his teammates. Again, playing left tackle here, definitely projects as a guard, as a mauler type run blocker. I'll tell you, my comparison for him is going to be Jeremiah Wright, but you could throw, guys I was mentioning earlier, Mike Berry's, those type of good, powerful interior offensive linemen. You can see, he's a little bit high, but him pulling here, you can see the feet and the athleticism relative to his size. He had to kind of throttle down there to try to get that guy in space, but you can see what he's probably going to be doing. He's going to be doing a lot of what he's doing here now. He's going to be doing a lot of pulling, blocking down on people, climbing to the second level and getting his hands on people like Jeremiah Wright, does a good job of from time to time as well. So, again, a lot of things that I do like. His minuses are, it's like, it's the good weight, bad weight type thing. And then just like knee bend, how I was pointing out earlier, him being able to like really get down into a stance and play low relative to his size. But again, Jeremiah Wright comp, if he turns into Jeremiah Wright, that'd be great for us. But maybe now because interior offensive lineman, relatively low ranked, low competition relatively here as well. And it's a developmental position, so it's kind of hard to tell. But a guy like that we picked up for sure. All right, next we got a guy named Devin Williams. He's a defensive back, corner, whatever you want to call it, 5'9", 180, so pretty small dude. Playing at Buford High School, I believe. You can see him here playing defensive back. Now, this is his junior film. He had an injury, didn't play, I don't think any, his senior year, so this past fall. I believe this is Raiola playing quarterback here, right? So, and there's him playing receiver, and so that's some things that I do like. I mean, his pluses for sure are speed, ball skills. I think he's competitive just by, if you watch this tape, whether he's playing on offense or on defense, he's got just a competitive nature to him that you like. I mean, that's a really great catch. So, hey, could he play some receiver? I don't know, maybe. I think that's something to consider. Obviously, his size is going to be a minus. That might be like the biggest thing. I mean, he's got a lot of speed. Again, he's competitive. I think his ball skills are good. He's pretty physical when tackling in the run game, especially considering his size, just based on what we can watch on his tape. So, coming off an injury, it is what it is. His comparisons for us, I think Amon Lane Gaines is a good one. I mean, he was actually injured, I believe, his senior year as well. A little bit of a smaller guy. You think about those guys that we've had in the past, though. Your Javaris Davises, your even like your Jeremiah Densons, those smaller guys. They're fast. I don't think he's as like rocked up as some of the guys that we've had. I think Javaris Davis is a fair comparison there. Amon Lane Gaines is another one, like I said, and also Javaris Johnson in terms of just offensively. Who knows if he could turn into a weapon offensively for us? I think by all accounts he projects to defensive back, but just really, if anything else, coming off the injury and then just his size. I mean, that's just, there's nothing you can do about it. That's why he's kind of this low on the list in terms of a guy that I would have in a maybe category, but good high school, competitive kid. He was committed to us for a long time. So again, a guy that I think can help us, maybe even help us a lot on special teams, in a return capacity or something like that. So good pickup for us, and we'll keep rolling. All right, so next we've got a really highly rated dude. I believe he's a 5-star on 247. Generally, kind of industry rated 4-star. So this is Malik Autry. All right, defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman from Opelika High School. You can see the size. All right, he's an absolute monster. He's 6'5", 325 listed. His pluses, his mass, and then more of an intangible off the field type thing. His popularity, I think, that kind of stuff does matter. And hopefully these guys turns into lead. I mean, that right there looks like Chris Jones, rushing as a interior defensive lineman coming from the edge there, kind of a 5 technique rush, 3-man rush. Look, he's a really highly rated and kind of thought of kid. All right. He's huge, so you love those things. Wasn't super productive as a senior at Opelika. You kind of worry about like the taking plays off type thing, but I think most of the reporting done from whether it's the Alabama-Mississippi All-Star game or I believe he was in the Under Armour All-American or maybe the Navy All-American. I can't remember. He was in an All-American Bowl. Pretty good reports there. His comparison for me right now is Jason Jones, okay? Jason Jones was by no means like a stellar contributor at Auburn, but he was solid. And at the end of the day, if Malik's role in the defense is, kind of a 2-gapper, nose type player, whether it's shade or 1 or, maybe even slide out to 3 at times, if mainly his role is going to be create a wall, 2-gap, don't get driven off the ball, displaced, or don't let, like a double team slide up to the next level where they can get their hands on a linebacker. If that's mainly his role, I think he can be fine here. And if he can provide some type of disruption in the backfield or pass rush, of course, that's going to be a plus. But I think he's going to have a lot of development in terms of just strength and power and explosion and what it's going to take to do the stuff that he does in high school in the SEC. I mean, that's just such a tough position. So that's why I'm a little bit unsure. That's why he's in the maybe category. But you have to love the ceiling and the upside. You just hope that he's able to reach it. Work really hard, get in the weight room, that kind of stuff. Even this, like right here, the effort, chasing down plays, backside, that kind of stuff. You got to have that play in and play out to really make it. So you hope he does it. You hope he really finds that like inner drive because, again, he's got as much potential really as any defensive lineman in his class in the entire country. So you love to see it. Hopefully he can reach it. All right, next we've got defensive lineman Darion Smith at our favorite Pipeline School in Maryland, who we're seemingly getting a lot of kids from now, which is great. Here's a little scoop and score showing the athleticism, but defensive lineman we're listing at 6'3", 260. Okay, so if you kind of just think about that, 6'3", 260, pretty slender as of now. His tape shows a lot of just like explosion and get off, like a little bit Amaris Williams-y in terms of what this tape. I mean, look at that explosion, swim move. Try to rip the ball out of the quarterback's hands on the backside sack there. Line it up interior here, 3 technique, outside shoulder of the guard. All right, so again, you can see pretty good hips, swim arm over move again, and then just finish in the backfield. So he ain't this low on the list because he's not a good football player. I actually love this kid. The pluses here, of course, active, his hands, his explosiveness, like all the things that you can watch right here and just be really impressed by. His negatives, like, let's see where he's at. His negatives, I don't know about like the actual freaky strength that you may have to have as a 3 technique. Now maybe he's playing more 5 and things like that, but basically, can he really hold up as an interior defensive lineman? He's going to have to add a lot. I mean, that he just killed that kid. He's going to have to add a lot, weight room, mass, strength, that kind of stuff to really do what he's doing here. But as just that kind of the tackling, twist, gang type stuff, I think he can provide a lot for us there. I think that's what we're probably going to look for him to do as a freshman early on, is help us out with rushing the passer. At the end of the day, I'm trying to be as non-barnerish and non-biased as possible in terms of I can't project everybody to be a player just because I like what I see on film. I do really like what I see on film here. His competition level is really good. So he's probably going to end up being a player, but just with the question marks in terms of his body type and his frame right now, being able to kind of adapt that to be able to be a really strong defensive lineman in the SEC, that's kind of the biggest question right now. My comparison for him, I wrote Michael Goggins, if you remember, number 49, strong side defensive end in that 4-3 scheme, which is a lot different than what we're running now. I think this kid would be that strong side defensive end, that Marlon Davidson type in that, even front system. We just run a totally different system now. So, again, the system now, you think about like what Keldrick does. He does play a little bit more inside. He's messing with tackles and guards and stuff like that. So you got to be able to do that in there. So that's the biggest thing. Michael Goggins, he's ended up being a really good player for us. If Darion ends up having that type of career, I do think he has a much higher ceiling. But that would be pretty good for us. So Darion Smith, definitely a guy to keep an eye on here. All right, next we're going to have Ryan G tied in. I'll just tell you, we're going tied in back-to-back here. But Ryan G tied in out of Georgia, listed at 6'5", 235. So he's definitely a bigger kid. And his pluses for me, like I love that he kind of knows his role. That just, he's even had interviews with different podcasts, things like that. Like he knows he's coming in to block. He knows that he's coming in to block, but if we do get the ball to him, go try to make a play. His comparison for me is Luke Deal, right? So if you just think about Luke Deal's role in our offense, get out there and block. I mean, he even looks kind of Brandon Frazier-ish there. So, blocking tight end, he knows his role. His minuses there are just, pass catching ability, playmaking ability. But if he can come in and be Luke Deal and have that role as more that inline blocking tight end or H-back and help us out there, then that'll be fine. And if he makes some plays in the pass game, that'll be a bonus. But love the kid. He's by all accounts big Auburn guy. He's really focused on helping us, turn everything around. So if he comes in and he blocks and he doesn't get a bunch of holding calls, stuff like that, then that'll be a good thing. All right, as we said, next, again, kind of the back-to-back tight ends. Hollis Davison, this is like basically the inverse tight end here. Of course, we can see him getting out and showing his blocking ability there. But this is your, slender, pass-catching tight end type guy, kind of your Rivaldo Fairweather role, although Rivaldo Fairweather was a true H-back. And I think Hollis will be more of the guy that you can see there. Maybe plays a little bit more in the slot, helps us in perimeter blocking for screens and stuff like that, but also, kind of runs down the seam and, helps us that way in the passing game as opposed to more of like a spatial player like Rivaldo was. But definitely somebody to kind of stretch vertically, I think. I think that's kind of the idea with him. He's listed at 6'6", 230, so again, slender guy, you can kind of see that. His comparison for me, I wrote Sal Cannella, kind of interesting. I mean, you can even see some like CJ Uzama, but CJ turned in such a great NFL career that I think it'd be kind of hard to, compare anybody to that. But you can see some of that, but definitely, more of the pass catching tight end. Obviously, that's going to be more of his pluses. His hands and his ball skills, I think, are really good. His minuses are going to be his mass and his blocking right now, although I think his effort's there. And he doesn't have elite speed, okay? So he's not going to be some guy that, like, comes in, think about the projection of, like, a guy like Caleb Odom or, of course, elite guys like your dude from Florida years back, or even like Brock Bauer. I mean, he's not going to be that type of game breaker, but I think a guy that can stretch it vertically. Obviously, these tight ends just as much of a developmental position as anything else. You got to be able to block. That's why these guys are maybes for me. But I think both pickups here in the tight end room. Of course, we'll talk about a transfer we picked up later. I think both these kids are good pickups. They just got a ways to go in terms of development. All right, next we've got Sam Turner, receiver out of Georgia, listed 6'1", 190. Go ahead and hit play here. He's down at the bottom of the screen. Okay, a little stutter, get off, stack, run the go ball, good catch. Now, let's point this out. This is his junior tape, okay? This is a junior highlight reel. His senior, highlight reel doesn't exist, or I couldn't really find it. His huddle page, that kind of stuff, whatever. There are a few highlights on Twitter you can find for his senior year, but in terms of just like a reel that you can pull up and hit play, this is it that I could find. So I know I've seen some stuff from his senior year. He looks better, obviously, than his junior year tape. A guy that, I think a lot of people are excited about, played against pretty good competition there in Georgia, does a lot of things really well. I think, ball skills are good, downfield tracking is good. Everybody kind of says he has really good hands and he's a smooth ball player, that kind of stuff. The minus there for me was no elite trait. So he's not going to be a guy that somebody's going to be, he's a 10-1, 10-2, 100-meter dash guy. He's got elite speed or anything like that. So he's a possession receiver. You can see a lot of the eating up hitches in the boundary and that kind of thing. He's possession receiver. His comp to me, I think you go a lot of different directions. I heard Cole Pinkston of On3 give a Shedrick Jackson comp. I think that's pretty good, actually. I gave Amari Kelly, so a guy who came out of Hewitt-Trussville a few years back, never really ascended as a game changer type guy at Auburn. Transferred, I believe, to Middle Tennessee. And I think this year he probably had 40 or 50 catches, probably as their leading receiver. Had a pretty good year there, Amari Kelly. So Sam Turner, 3-star kid, good football player out of Georgia. Definitely somebody who could become a good possession receiver for us. I don't see this unlimited potential or super high ceiling for him, but definitely a guy I think that can probably help us out sooner rather than later. You just don't know about his long-term ceiling and projection, but definitely a good pickup and a guy that I could definitely see contributing, in a good way in our receiver room. All right, next let's look at Donovan Starr. So again, we're still in the maybes category. 6 foot 175 listed, cornerback for sure. Really competitive recruiting, cycle. What I want you to do though is watch him right here. I want you to think about Anthony Schwartz and tell me he doesn't remind you of him, even though they're different positions. Donovan Starr does have elite speed. That's probably his best trait. Great, plant step trigger there, driving on the ball and the flat. Obviously very competitive kid. Again, we competed with Alabama and Vanderbilt to sign him. You can see him here playing some receiver. There's just a couple of things, I like, again, his speed, his length. I think, competitive and confident, those intangibles as a corner you have to have because you're going to get beat. You got to come back and keep playing. A couple of things that I have him in the maybes category, though. Physical and tackling, look, it's easy to drive on a guy when they're not really looking at you and look relatively physical. But, he's a pretty slender guy, and that's just one thing. Of course, I'm not going to show his whole tape here, but that's one thing that I wrote down that I'm interested to see. You can see him kind of finishing there. That I'm interested to see, as him taking that next step to the SEC. Can he be physical enough to really help us out at least early on in his career? And then the sprinter stuff, does that equal stiffness? As a corner, you got to have fluid hips. You got to be able to turn around. You got to be able to move. So those are some of the things. Look, he was a 4-star kid. A lot of people wanted him. Alabama wanted him late. So it's not like he's a maybe for me. Okay. But I compared him to Keontae Scott. That's another one. If you watch him as, playing defensive back, he reminds me a little bit of Keontae Scott. I can't tell you exactly what it is. Maybe it's his number. Keontae Scott's a hell of an athlete, okay? And Keontae Scott was really good a couple years ago playing that slot corner position. I think different skill sets, but just maybe the way he moves reminds me of Keontae Scott. Keontae was, really grabby and just unconfident when we moved him outside. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case with him, but that's just kind of some of the things I see with him. As a defensive back specifically. So we'll see. I think for a lot of people, this is a guy that people are anticipating coming in and making an immediate impact. So I could be really off. But there's just a few things that I just kind of see where, it gives me a little bit of hesitancy in throwing him into the players category, somebody that I would make a bet that he'd come in and make an impact at Auburn. So we'll see. But, I think he's obviously got a lot of good traits. All right, next we got Ashton Daniels. So this is our first transfer player. He's in the maybe category. Look, he's a older kid, obviously. I think he's only going to have 1 year left. Of course, his pluses are going to be experience. Coming in, I think, with all of his interviews, he's from Buford, Georgia. Maybe just want to be closer to home. He's coming in. I think he probably understands the deal where he's coming in probably to be a backup quarterback. The touchdown interception ratio is really bad for 2 years in a row as a starting quarterback at Stanford. But he does do some good things. So we can pull this up. So this is the season opener versus TCU. So we can kind of watch this. He's very mobile. All right, really good athlete. His comparison to me is like a better Robbie Ashford. I think that's pretty good for a backup quarterback. I think about as good as you can hope for. A guy that has started Power 4 college football for 2 years. A guy that has seen a lot of things. A guy that can come in, be a leader, hopefully. And look, if we got to put him in, obviously ball security there. But if we got to put him in, I think he can execute the offense, and he can at least be a threat on the ground with his legs. Of course, his minuses with the interceptions, decision making, and accuracy. Accuracy just being even if everything is right, does he deliver the ball exactly where he wants to for the most part? You can see here a lot of these highlights are going to be on the ground. There we go again. There's another one, right? So you can kind of see that as that plays out. He's made some plays in the air. I think one of the best highlights probably of last year was I think he threw a game-winning touchdown pass. There's one there, so he's got a big arm against Travis Hunter in Colorado. So he's done some pretty good stuff. Okay, but coming in as a backup quarterback, don't have to waste too much time on that. Really good pickup, but a guy that may never start as a quarterback at Auburn. All right, next, still in the maybes category here, I've got our second transfer to talk about, nose tackle, straight up nose tackle, Dallas Walker, 6'3", 330. Now, look, I'm cheating right here. This is his Welcome to the Hill transfer highlight video when he transferred from Texas A&M to West Kentucky. I think it's relevant to point out that these first few clips are for playing at Texas A&M when our current defensive coordinator was his defensive coordinator. But nose tackle, okay, so we're not expecting him to go make a bunch of flashy plays. You can kind of see what he's doing here, okay, get his hand up, bat a ball down. I think there's one more play. Okay, so now we're going to more of his high school tape. Look, he's a big dude. He's a space eater, all right. Doesn't have to be, overly dynamic or explosive. I mean, that's kind of his minuses for me. His comp is going to be Justin Rogers. I mean, when's the last time you thought about Justin Rogers? But Justin Rogers helped us out, okay? So we need some nose tackles. He's got, experience at Texas A&M and West Kentucky. I did go back and watch, here's him, so he's a pretty good athlete there. I went and watched the West Kentucky versus Alabama game from last year, and I thought he did some good things. So, again, it's a nose tackle, space eater, two-gapper, that kind of thing. So it's a good pickup for us, a guy we needed, a guy that's got familiarity in our system and with our defensive coordinator. So Dallas Walker, nose tackle. All right, next we got Tay Seymour, another transfer safety, 5'11", 205 out of Georgia Tech. That's him in the back end here. So this is a clip that I made. It's only 2 plays, but it's something I clipped up because it when we got him, I thought it was relevant to kind of look at. I'll just tell you some of the things real quick, and then we'll watch this. So, look, experience. He's played in a lot of games. I think he has a higher ceiling than a guy that we lost in that safety room, Caleb Wooden. I think he's got a higher ceiling than him. And then, look, his minus is speed and like just high end traits, but his comp to me is Daniel Thomas. I don't think he's obviously, I think he's doesn't have a ton of eligibility, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, whatever. He was best friends with Eric Singleton or whatever. I believe his roommate at Georgia Tech, so maybe that kind of helped us out there. But I think he can help us. So watch this. So it's 4th and 1 against Syracuse, okay? Early in the year, 3rd game for Georgia Tech. I'm going to hit play here, okay? So 4th and 1, speed option. Now look, they got the first down, but that open field tackle is like not easy to do. All right, let's come back here. All right, so we'll watch him. Free safety, boom. Look at all this space. He closes it down. He keeps his feet hot, makes the good tackle, and then just the way he kind of pops it. Doesn't that remind you of Daniel Thomas a little bit? I mean, it does me. And I believe this very next play, and we'll kind of roll this forward. This very next play, here's him rock and rolling down, blitz. Now look, the quarterback keeps it, but by all accounts, the quarterback would be his man there, kind of on a contain type of scenario. So he looks pretty good to me. I think he can help us again. He's not going to be, I don't think, like a starting safety, but a guy that comes in and rotates, and I think he's a pretty good player. So excited about the pickup. He's in the maybe category, but I think he's pretty good. So that's what I see. All right, 3rd transfer in a row. We've got Preston Howard, tight end out of Maryland. Now, I did go and I watched his highlights, or not his highlights because they don't exist, but I watched games of Maryland and kind of watched him. And so I got what I got from that, but then, this is just an easier kind of clip to share. This are his high school highlights, okay? This is high school highlights. He's playing like Wildcat quarterback here, basically. And, I mean, look at the athleticism, okay? So he's 6'4", 231 listed on Maryland's site, all right? Really good athletic profile. Pass catching is a plus for sure. Here's him again. He's running around as a quarterback, okay? Now, Lamar Jackson, right? So good pass catcher. His comparison for me is actually going to be John Samuel Shanker. I think that's a pretty good comparison. You can think about a lot of guys. I mean, another guy, C.J. Uzoma, back in the day, played quarterback in high school, so you could kind of, lean that direction as well. I don't think he's as big. I mean, C.J. was really a freak genetically, but John Samuel Shanker, I think this kid doesn't have necessarily like elite traits. All right, although in high school you can kind of see he was pretty good player, and I think he's probably a minus blocker. But that's not really what we're bringing him in to do, to be that blocker, that blocking role. I think we're bringing him in to be a good pass-catching option, H-back, again, Rivaldo-type usage there, while Brandon Frazier can help us out as the inline blocker. So good pickup. He's not going to play for, 4 years at Auburn, so development's not necessarily going to be there. I think he's got 1 or 2 years left again. But good player. I think he can, definitely find a role in the offense, but not necessarily I would put money on, being an impact player for us. All right, next we've got Horatio Fields. I'm going to go ahead and hit play. He's down here at the bottom of the screen. So Horatio Fields, another transfer from Wake Forest. All right, he's got 1 year left, so I think that's relevant. You can see his stats on the bottom, 36 receptions, 400 yards on the season. He's a possession receiver, okay? I've got him as like an X receiver, what you would consider to be like a boundary receiver. He's a bigger guy, again, 6'3", 205. Good player. I mean, he's a good player. It's just, he's going to rotate with Cam, with Perry, with those outside guys. And I think, obviously, hopefully bring him in as more of like a leadership role, that kind of thing. Really good player. I mean, I think he, my comp for him is actually, I believe I wrote it down as Seth Williams. Yeah. So, I mean, he just reminds me of Seth Williams. If you watch a lot of his tape, you'll see a lot of contested catches. Hopefully we'll see one of these here pretty soon, but, good hands catch over the middle. Not going to be overly dynamic after the catch. Pluses for me, contested catches, downfield ball tracking. Minuses are going to be separation. That's pretty common for a like a bigger possession receiver. Okay, so not a huge deal. But you can see that really athletic catch there. Not sure if they're showing in the next few seconds, but I think against Clemson, I think that's the game that I watched, had some really good like contested catches. And that's obviously one of the pluses I wrote down for him. So 1 year guy, he would, in my mind, he would have to basically lead you in receiving for me to put him in like the players category. Is he going to duplicate his production from this season? 36 catches, 400 yards, 2 touchdowns? Maybe. I could see it. But definitely a good option for us. Provides depth and provides, a guy who's competed in Power 4 football against some pretty good competition there. So really good pickup out of the portal. I think he's pretty darn good. If I'm comparing to Seth Williams was like the best receiver that we had there for a stretch. I just think that room is a lot more competitive now. But again, good player. Excited we have him. Horatio Fields from Wake Forest there. All right, next on the list, we're still in the maybes category. I've got 3 more guys, including this kid right here, until we get into like the guys that are in my players category, the guys that I would make a bet on making an impact at Auburn. So this is another transfer. Now look, this kid Xavier Atkins, you can see some of his stats there. Xavier Atkins from LSU, he was a true freshman this fall. All right. You can see the athleticism. He was a 4-star kid out of Texas. Really good competition there. Okay, burst through the line, unblocked. Okay, finish on the sack. This next play right here is to me what we're looking at. Okay, so we've got like a design rollout here, just flying to the. I mean, what does that remind you of DeMarcus Riddick? Right now, his comp for me is going to be Zacoby McClain. Okay, I do see. Obviously, he's a smaller backer. I think he's listed 6'2", 6'2", all right, something like that. So, but I mean, you saw him kill that kid. I looked and I tried to find as much of his playing time at LSU this fall as possible. He looks good, and like I try to look up some stuff from LSU fans and boards and stuff like that. Nobody was super excited about him leaving. He obviously has a ton of potential. If he was a guy we signed out of Texas this season as a true freshman, we would be super excited about him. So the fact that he transferred from LSU, it's hard to know all the reasons that people transfer, especially after just one season as a true freshman. But I think this kid's really good. Okay, he's got great genetic kind of makeup there. He's super rocked up. I think he'll probably gain hopefully another 10 pounds or so before next fall, be listed more close to 220 pounds. You do worry about the room, like it's like how many DeMarcus Riddick, Xavier Atkins, if you're thinking Zacoby McClain, how many of those guys can you have? You need some beefier guys, it seems like. But I mean, running sideline to sideline, being able to make plays, I think he's physical. All right, so Zacoby McClain didn't have a problem playing in the box. Okay. And I think that's kind of what I see with this kid. So I'm really excited about him. It's just the transfer thing is a little bit weird, and then he doesn't have prototypical size as a box linebacker. But DJ Jerkin seems to have a type that he really likes, and I think this guy is that guy. He loves him to be super athletic, super fast, super physical. So not a whole lot not to like, but still in the maybe category for me. But I like this kid a lot. All right, 2 more guys left here in the maybes category, and then we get to like the players. Broderick Scholl, almost like a 5-star offensive tackle. Okay, just a lot of varied opinion on him, I guess, as a prospect. I think he's out of Oklahoma, right? So he's kind of traveling a long way, but presumably Jake Thornton, the offensive line coach, made a really good connection with him. Interesting kid, has a lot of like off the field interests that I think are relevant. Like I think he's like a beekeeper, and I think he was in a lot of his like school plays and stuff. So I mean, whatever. I think that's cool. Super athletic, you can see that, right? And Hugh Freeze talked a lot about him in the signing day kind of presser as a guy who he sees could contribute sooner rather than later. He's going to have to add strength and mass to his frame for sure. I think he's listed 6'5", 275. So I mean, he's got to be 300 plus. He's nimble and punchy. That's kind of the stuff that I wrote down. Mass, strength, and the homesick factor. You never really know. I comped him to Connor Lew. That's who he reminds me of. I mean, even if we watch some of this a little bit again, or we're going to get ad. But Connor Lew was a wrestler in high school, and he was always like his high school tape was I'm always under control. I'm always kind of square. My base is good, and that's what I saw when I looked at Broderick Scholl. Obviously, they're not playing the same position, but that's kind of the stuff I saw. So even if we watch a couple of these over again, if you just think about like Connor Lew, especially his high school tape, that's just kind of what I see there. So if you had a Connor Lew projection as a offensive tackle, I mean, I think that'd be pretty good. And again, on some recruiting services, this guy's really highly rated. So got to be really excited about developmental position. So you never know, but Broderick Scholl there, guy that I think will end up being pretty good. All right, next, last player in the maybe category for me, we got Alvin Henderson, running back out of Elba, Alabama, 5'9", 195. You know who he is. He's like 10,000-yard rusher in high school. This was him in the All-American game, I think the Navy All-American game he played in. So here's him getting the check down. And it's maybe not even as bad this time, but the first time I saw this, I was like, holy cow, he looks slow. Look, he's in a maybe category because I don't know if his athletic profile is going to project enough to the next level to be like a star running back for us. Okay. He's not big. He didn't play against good competition. I think he's got like good vision, and I think he's got good like contact balance and agility and stuff like that. But we'll see. He's in a maybe category. Good recruiter for us and stuff like that. But I just don't know if he's going to project to like being a stud running back for us at the next level. All right, next we're looking at our first player category, or player in our player category. So these are guys that I'm betting on making an impact. This is C.K. Murray, transfer out of Sam Houston State. All right, so you love his build. I think he's 6'3", 255. Here he is shooting in the backfield, making a play. Look, at the end of the day, he produced really well. I think he had double-digit sacks, 11.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, excuse me. But, look, produced pretty well. I just think at the buck position, 6'4", 255, pedigree, he was a 4-star on, I think, Rivals or one of the sites, maybe ESPN, coming out of high school, signed with TCU, transferred to Sam Houston State. Okay, so he's got a pedigree. He's got good pop, good production. All right, so I watched some of these full games. There he is, 0, causing havoc there. I watched some of these full games. I don't think he has an elite trait. All right, so he's not D Ford or somebody like that off the edge. He doesn't have elite length. I think he's, just a good player. If you think about it, he's probably a late or not a draft pick. Okay, so you just got to think in terms of that. But if you think about him kind of helping out with Keyron Crawford, as well as kind of those younger guys coming along, Jamonte Waller, Joseph Phillips in that buck room, really good pickup for us, and I think he's going to play a lot. So that's why I'm banking on him being a player. But I don't think he's going to be like a superstar by any means. But really good pickup for us, and I think he'll be a really good contributor. All right, next players category again, guys I'm betting on, making an impact at Auburn. Elijah Melendez, inside linebacker, all right, 6'1", 225 out of Florida. Unfortunately, he doesn't have like a super, put together highlight tape as far as his whole senior season. You can see the pick off there. He had some little clips, you can go find them, Twitter or YouTube shorts, stuff like that, of like really, I would say spectacular plays, at least a handful. But he is a monster genetically. That's probably his number one trait, in my opinion, or his number one plus, in my opinion, is just his genetics. He is absolutely ripped, super strong-looking kid. You can see, physicality, the tenacious tracking, the finishing there on tackling. Inside linebacker all the way, so you got to love that. That's something we talked about that we need more of. My thing is, how will the game speed affect him? That's kind of his only minus to me, is like, you've seen guys, in the past that, if you think about like Jake Collins, some other people like that, where, man, the really productive high school guys, and it just didn't click in college. So how will the increase in speed affect him? You don't want their arms out and reaching and that kind of stuff. Wesley Steiner, that kind of thing. But really good prospect, 4-star kid. I'm thinking KJ Britt, but Wesley Steiner on like the scary side. That's just kind of who he reminds me of. Steiner was a 4-star kid that projected really well, but KJ Britt hopefully is who we're getting there, but Elijah Melendez has got to be really excited about. All right, Blake Woodby next on the list. We've got 5'10", 180 listed on Auburn's current roster. He's, I think, listed at 5'11", so I actually do think he's got decent length. I don't think he's like a small person by any means here. I believe this interception is on the kid that signed with Alabama, I believe. But look, he played against exceptional competition again. One of the Maryland kids, Darian Smith, Blake Woodby. Who's my other guy? Outside linebacker. Where's he at? Bryce Diaz. With a lot of other 2026 kids that are coming up as well. So that high school in Maryland's really good competition. But All-American Bowl guy. Some of the things I wrote down. Competition obviously really good. I think he's really fluid. I think his speed is really good. I think his leadership qualities are really good as well. He's just excited to be at Auburn. Mainly to me, his one knock is just his size. Can't do anything about it. If he's 5'10"-ish, just is what it is. But we've had guys be successful at that kind of shorter size at the outside corner position, which I do think that's what he is an outside corner. Roger McCreary, that kind of thing. I think he looks like Kayan Lee. Okay, like that's who he reminds me of, just what he looks like when he's moving around and playing football. But I think he plays more like Roger McCreary. All right, so Roger McCreary, second-round pick, one of the Titans' best players on defense, so that's a really high projection. Blake Woodby's a really good player, 5-star on ESPN, I believe. So, really excited about this kid. He's in my player category for a reason. I think he'll come in, and I think he'll compete for early playing time this year. All right, Derek Smith is next on the list out of Selma High School, playing, I believe, in the slot right here, right? No, okay, outside receiver. Jumping up and just, look, Derek Smith did not play against, we talked about his brother, did not play against great competition. All right, in high school, he can't do anything about it. He's playing everywhere, playing defensive back, playing quarterback, playing receiver, whatever basically the team needs him to do. That's basically what he's doing. Great athlete, flip from Bama. Projects as a receiver. A lot of people like him as defensive back. Doesn't really matter. It's just a guy that, kind of like the Malcolm Simmons last year, the guy that it'd be really hard for me to say that he's not going to develop into a guy who has a really impactful role at Auburn. May not be year one, but at some point, I think he's going to find a home, whatever position, and I think he'll be a really good player. You could watch this all day. He's just better than everybody else on the field that he plays against. And so, excited about him. Maybe needs a year or so of development, but I think after that, he'll be a really good player for us somewhere. And I forgot to do his pluses and minuses. Pluses for me, I've got, ball players, versatility. I think those are good things. Minuses, his role. If somebody doesn't have like a clearly carved out role like Elijah Melendez, let's say, like we know what he's supposed to be doing, that's a little bit shaky, whether he's offense or defense, whatever. And then I don't know that his top end speed is elite. So, you could just have a little minus there. His comp to me is actually Jarvis Landry. If you go watch Jarvis Landry play, he's a really physical guy, even though he's not huge. So if Derek does end up playing receiver, I think that's like a decent comp just as far as like an athletic profile, not necessarily how good he's going to be, maybe, like a long NFL career. So good contested catch here. You can see stuff that Jarvis Landry used to do. All right, let's look at Bryce Diaz next again. Blake Woodby, Darian Smith's teammate there in Maryland. So, great pipeline for us. Linebackers, his projection, kind of that dime linebacker, Eugene Asante, some of what DeMarcus Riddick was doing last year. So, again, that's, a little bit of the interesting thing about that room is a lot of those type guys. He's, 6'1", 205 listed. But, man, great athlete, 3-star kid, but, I think a lot of people like him as a projected player on defense. He's kind of that new age. You can see him ranging sideline to sideline there. He's kind of that new age defensive football player. He may not be as, specific of a position. This is one thing I really like. I think he's a really good running back. I don't know. I would actually give him a pretty hard look there. You'd love the size, 6'1", 205 as a running back. His competition's great. That's a plus. Physical ball player, that's a plus. Minus, is he a better running back? I mean, his running back highlight tape is awesome. And he's another spatial linebacker, again, kind of that clogged room. But I comped him to Riddick without expectations. So DeMarcus Riddick just without expectations. That's who he just kind of reminds me of. Looking at him hurdling that dude. Again, he's playing against good competition. So really interesting player, but a player that I'm betting on. I think a lot of people are betting on despite his low ranking, being a really good college football player. We'll let this one play one more time too. I mean, that's awesome. Wouldn't you love to see that, playing running back? So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but I think he's really good. All right, next in my players category, I got running back Darrell Robinson out of UConn. He's a 4-star coming out of high school, went to UConn. I think he went straight to UConn, or maybe transferred. Anyway, UConn was really interesting. Jim Mora, the NFL guy, he's head coach there. They didn't have like a bell cow. They really rotated like 3 guys, so he doesn't have a ton of statistics. Listed at 6'1", 200. Positives, I got 1 cut, and you'll see that in a second. Knees up type guy. That's one thing Jim Mora described him as well, like picking his feet up for a big guy. He's a load. And then again, his pedigree as a 4-star. His minuses to me, he's a little bit upright, stiff looking, and I don't know if he can really catch the ball in the backfield. We'll see. I comped him to Glenn Coffey in my head, and then I looked at Glenn Coffey's like profile. He was 6', 209, and Darrell is 6'1", 200, so pretty similar builds, but just thought that was interesting. But anyway, we'll play this forward. So we'll see this, hitting the kind of I call that a hash cut out of like a split zone. I mean, that's pretty nice looking. We'll see this play forward from the end zone view as well. All right, 1 cut, boom, and get north and south. You can see his size as well. And in a second, the very next highlight here, watch this run right here. All right, so, hey, boom, contact balance, knees up, driving his feet, everybody pushing. So There's not a ton of just like highlights you can go find, but here's a couple of things there to kind of highlight who I think he can be for us. Here he is in pass pro. So anyway, I think he's going to be a good player. I actually think he might end up being our leading rusher this year. Okay, Damari's going to get his shot, but this is a guy I think that can do a lot for us. There he is again. Especially as a guy that's like a bigger guy that can get some tough yardage for. So I like him a lot. Or that's not him. Well, anyway. All right, next we're looking at a guy named Rayon Strader, transfer out of Miami of Ohio. I believe he had 2 picks this last season for Miami, Ohio. We'll hit play. Here he is in the boundary. This is just something like he didn't do a great job, so I think it's relevant to point out. And then in a couple of plays here, he'll have an interception. It's really hard like to put together some type of video that I can show that's like, here he is again in the boundary. I watched as much as I could really find. He's got good size, okay. What's he listed at? He is listed at 6 foot 183 plus his length. He's got good length. You can kind of see that on film as well. The minus is really just like, do we really know? Like, look, I can show you this. I can look at this stuff. Here's his pick. Okay, that's great. Do we really know? I mean, it's so hard to say. I comped him to Jay Crawford. Do I think he's going to be as good as Drake Crawford? I don't really know. But I think he's a good player. I think he's going to play for us. I think he gives us some options. And I like how he moves. And I think he's pretty good. So I like who he is. But at the end of the day, it's hard to know. All right, next we've got center Cale Ellis, who is a reclassification. He was a 2026 kid, so he should still be in high school for one more year. But he's coming out to join the team, so I like that. Center, you can see he's a pretty big kid. He's listed at 6'3", 305 already. I think his skill is really good for the position, and I think he's really physical. You can see that, just for a couple of plays. He did a really good job of just like being, I don't know, like vocal on Twitter, I guess. By all accounts, he's like ready to, be an Auburn guy and just do the work and that kind of stuff. Presumably he'll fit right in after, Connor Lew uses his eligibility as kind of our next man up at center. So you like to see that. I think he's just a really good worker. He's really young, obviously, so he's just going to have to develop. But I actually comped him to Reese Dismutes. Reese Dismutes was, a really good center for us. Wasn't some like super high NFL draft pick or anything like that, but good center. He's a little bit bigger and maybe a little bit more powerful than what we see with like Connor Lew, who's, I would say he's more of like an agile type player there, but really excited about him. Good pickup. Like I said, if I had to bet, he'd be our starting center for 2 or 3 years after Connor Lew leaves. So good pickup for us. All right, next we've got quarterback Deuce Knight, and I thought about going a few different ways. And again, these are chronological, okay? So these are like in order the guys who I would bet the most money on or least money on. So as we kind of climb this list, these are guys that I'm starting to bet more and more money that will be good players for us. 6'4", 208, obviously 5-star kid. You know who Deuce Knight is, okay? Could went a lot of different directions with the video to kind of look at. Alabama Mississippi All-Star game, his huddle highlights, whatever. But this is actually from Auburn Undercover, went to a game. This to me is like his most impressive collection of clips from a single game. So why not look at the most fun stuff? Look, he's obviously, you can see how he's built. He looks like Cam Newton wearing number 2, okay, as a young kid. You can talk about all the pluses, playmaking, arm talent, poise. I mean, he's got like a real arm. I do think he has a lot of poise. He's almost like too calm for me at times. Sometimes that can be a positive and a negative. The negatives for me, experience, his competition's terrible out of Mississippi, and his processing for me, look, he's not supposed to be a finished product yet, okay? So that's understood. But, that's the things he's going to work on. Jason Caldwell, other people I think have comped him to Vince Young. I think that's a really good comp. Obviously being a lefty here, a little bit different, but you can see some of the plays he's making. You just hope it works out. I mean, that's all you can really say. 5-star kid, obviously. You can see the athletic potential there. He's good with his feet. So you hope it works out, but I mean, you can't, complain about a 5-star quarterback recruit. So. All right, next we've got Antonio Coleman, defensive lineman out of Carolina High School, 6'1", 265, so kind of a similar profile as Darian Smith. And honestly, when you look at tape, it's kind of a similar type deal. You can see the explosion, the get off, the disruptiveness. Look, again, kind of similar, 265. If you're going to be a kind of a 3 technique type guy, who I think that's where they project him, he's going to have to get bigger. Okay, so his mass is a minus right now. Another minus is just like the flips. I think he was what did he commit to Alabama first and then flip to Auburn, then Alabama, then Auburn again, something like that, or maybe I don't know. He flipped a bunch, so you never really know those type guys. It's transfer portal and all this kind of stuff. Okay, scoop and score here. You can see the athleticism, so that's good. His positives again, just like explosive, disruptive, and I think his play strength is greater than just being 265 pounds. And how can you hold up? And he's playing against good competition, but. Really quick twitch guy for an interior defensive lineman, so you like that. His comp for me, I got kind of lazy and just wrote like he looks to me, especially when he gets to like 290, 295, which I think will be his play weight, he looks like a Georgia defensive lineman to me. You think about just guys that just are nasty and they get in and they just wreak havoc and kill people. That's what he looks like. I mean, tell me that doesn't look like a Georgia defensive lineman right there. So that's what I see. Obviously, he has just a ton of potential. You hope it just, he's in there for the spring. You hope he's able to put on some pounds and do really well and contribute, because we need help at that position. So Antonio Coleman. All right, next we've got Jared Smith, Thompson High School. Here he is, super long, kind of a weird, like, I don't know, scoliosis looking thing or something. He kind of like leans to the left, so I don't know what that's about. Maybe they can like get him straightened out. But I mean, look at this. He's basically a fringe 5-star type kid on a couple of different recruiting services. What is he? 6'5", 6'6", 235. Okay, so his length, and I do think he has legit juice. This is against Grayson High School this past season, obviously at Thompson. Legit juice coming off the edge. Okay, up and down in terms of like production. But you're definitely, it's kind of like a Deuce Knight type thing. You're taking this dude on potential. Here he is, kind of in a more of like a 5 technique defensive end. Definitely could grow into that type of role. So his projection is a little bit of a question mark. Is he going to be a buck? I don't really see it that way. I see him as a defensive end. So there he is there. And his strength, I mean, he's just going to have to get a lot stronger, because I do see him as a defensive end. He looks like those, I got kind of lazy with the last comp as a Georgia defensive lineman. He looks like a South Carolina defensive lineman, okay? There's a whole long list of 6'6" defensive ends that played at South Carolina. Ironically, that's probably the school that, we were able to beat out for his signature there. So pretty funny. But, by all interviews and things I see with him, he looks like a kid that is, got his head on straight and is ready to come in and work. So love to see that. Obviously, Anquan Fegans as his teammate there at Thompson with Caleb Harris. Well, he didn't play with Caleb Harris, but obviously good program, state championship. So anyway, Jared Smith. All right, next we've got Eric Winters, who is a 6'2", 195-pound safety at Enterprise High School. Plays a lot of different positions. Senior year film here, you can see a kickoff return. Projected at safety. I think he can play a lot of different things. I personally really like him as like I comped him to Minka Fitzpatrick, okay? I mean, that's who he kind of reminds me of. Now, that's obviously very lofty. He's like a Pro Bowl guy. He was a 5-star player and all that kind of stuff. But that's who I kind of see. I see him more of a box defender and less of like a free safety. So whether that's a boundary safety who rolls, up and down a little bit. Some people like him to, project at second level at linebacker, that kind of thing. But I like projecting him as like a star position. That's kind of where he's playing right here in a condensed set. So, that's what I see. You love his genetics and just like his physical traits. He can do a lot of different things. That's not a bad thing. But I think agility, playing in space, look, he was playing quarterback, that kind of thing. But super high rated guy, high 4-star kid, beat Georgia for him, I think, when it came down to it. So really good player. You can see, a lot of good tackler, that kind of thing. So a guy that I'm really excited about, and I expect him to be on the field early this year. All right, next we've got Keldrick Falk's little brother, JJ, Caleb Falk. You can see he's not little by any means. He is listed, okay, at 6'3", 225 as a linebacker, okay? So he could be a buck, could be an interior linebacker, inside linebacker, that kind of thing, a box guy. But man, he looks great. And I, honestly kind of have always thought of him as like Keldrick's little brother, that kind of thing. He's a stud, dude. I mean, he is legit. Now, he's not playing against great competition, just like Keldrick. But you got to love his pedigree, okay? Like genetics and all that kind of stuff really matter. So you think about Malik Blockton as Marcus Harris's little brother. You think about J.J. Falk as Keldrick Falk's little brother. That stuff, that lineage really matters, and I think that's going to help. his lower body build is great. Now you can't really tell here, but like his legs are tree trunks, dude. So he's not, he's not like some skinny kid. I mean, he's already built really well, I think. And then I see, look, of course, the position question mark. I like projecting him as a box linebacker. I didn't think I would. I think, you look at like 6'3", 225, and you think Buck. But man, if he can play, I mean, he just killed that kid. If he can play as a box linebacker, I mean, that would be so great. That's obviously a lot of what he's doing here. Again, not, at Highline home, not at a lot of high competition, but he looks like a physical Chris Frost as a comp. Fred Warner. I mean, tell me this doesn't look like Fred Warner. Okay, I know Fred Warner's like the best linebacker in the NFL, so you can't really do that, but like that's who he looks like when he plays. So I don't know. When I went back through everything, I got really excited about him. He's not an afterthought. He's a high-rated guy, high 4-star guy. So I mean, he could be a guy that plays early too, just like his older brother. All right, next we've got nose tackle out of Birmingham, Jordan Crawford, 6'1", 330, nose tackle. Okay, we're going to go strength, absolute anchor as his positives. Length doesn't really have it. And like pursuit, if you're 6'1", 330, probably not going to be the best like pursuit defensive. But look at this right here. Okay, this is against Carrollton High School, one of the best high schools in Georgia. Absolutely blowing it up, making a play. Like he's going to be a stud. I think he'll play really early. I don't know if he'll start at nose tackle, but I think he's got a shot. There he is chasing down Juju. Comparison to me, I'm going like on a sliding scale somewhere between Isaiah Rakes to McKinley Jackson, both guys that played at Texas A&M for DJ Durkin. Rakes obviously played for us as a transfer. McKinley Jackson was a really good player at nose tackle, so I think he could be McKinley Jackson. I mean, there's Bodney Cleveland there at number 8. Okay, but that's kind of what I see. I think Rakes on the low end and McKinley Jackson or somebody like that on the high end, but a really good player. I think he'll start for us sooner rather than later. All right, next we've got Anquan Figgins, and just to kind of give you some perspective, Anquan is basically like 4th from the top. So the next 3 guys, which are all transfer portal guys, are my top 3 guys. So like basically Anquan Figgins is the guy that I feel the best about making an impact at Auburn from the high school signees. You could pick a lot of different things. Here's a minute of a highlight tape from the state championship game. Okay, they play him at corner all year at Thompson. Here he is just staying on top of, kind of I don't know what he's running, almost like a corner. But look, there's really not even that much to. He's 6'1.5", 190. He's got great size for a safety, free safety for sure. He just doesn't miss. Like he doesn't really miss tackles. He doesn't miss, the chance to make a play. He's tracking balls downfield. I don't have a minus for him. Okay, maybe he doesn't have like sprint speed, but I think he's going to test well when that time comes for the NFL. You could pick any safety that was a stud to compare him to. I think Eddie Jackson's a really good one from Alabama. I think, look, this is a kid that you think is going to Alabama at the end of the day. He's just a stud. He wasn't a 5-star. He probably should have been. Obviously, Caleb Harris coming out of Thompson as a safety was a 3-star. That ended up being a all SEC freshman player. So you gotta love it. He's great. Can't wait to see him. I think he'll be a starter at safety for us this year as a freshman. All right, next we're going to go quarterback Jackson Arnold, 6'1", 210, former 5-star plus. And look, I could have done a lot of things from some reps at Oklahoma, obviously, where there was like the bowl game or a few games from his true freshman year in 2023 or, games this year in 2024. But I think the point here that I've kind of landed on, all right, is at the end of the day, he's essentially like a year removed from being, a 5-star plus quarterback, one of the highest ranked quarterback in his class. Okay. So if you look at who he was, and I believe he was out of Texas, something like that. If you watched his tape and if he was coming in as a true freshman, how excited will we be? I think that's pretty relevant. It's not like he was ruined from his time in Oklahoma. We know about all the struggles, offensive line issues, offensive coordinator getting fired, blah, blah, blah. Okay. He had a lot of bad moments and he had some like good moments at Oklahoma as well. But the talent is here. All right, and I thought what I wanted to try to do was like, all right, who would I compare him to if he was coming in as a true freshman? I mean, he's a dual sport athlete, really athletic. He's got good arm talent. All right, like he can throw it. His minuses to me, and this is more from his time in Oklahoma, the snowball effect at times. It's like something bad happens and then it snowballs into like really bad things happening. Is he capable of being consistent? less ups, less downs. I mean, I think so. He's really young, okay? But look at that throw. It's ridiculous. What I'm comparing him to is when I watched this, okay, what this looks like to me is if you went back and you watched Bo Nix's high school tape and you watched this, I think it would look pretty similar, okay? A lot of plays like that. But I think he's less jittery. And I hope that makes some semblance of sense. But even if you literally watch this side by side with Bo Nix and his highlight tape, even in high school, his highlight tape, Bo Nix is like very erratic, very jittery, makes a lot of really big plays, and obviously he's very talented. Had a great year as a rookie in the NFL. But Jackson looks like that, but just less jittery. And I think, a lot of people are going to have a lot of opinions. A lot of people are going to talk about it, whatever. I think Jackson's going to be good for us. I think he's going to be good in Hugh's scheme. I think you got basically everything you want right here to be like a better version of Chad Kelly, a more draftable version of Chad Kelly. That's kind of who he reminds me of as well. So, anyway, really excited about it. Thought it'd be more relevant to look at his high school tape here and kind of try to deduce. I mean, look at that. Flick at that. So, anyway, really good player. I'm excited about him. I'm a Jackson Arnold fan. I know there's, some kind of polarization there, but I like him. All right, next we got, maybe my favorite player. I've got this guy and one more guy. You can probably do the math on who my, highest rated player is in terms of guys I'm sure about. But this is Xavier Chaplin, okay? Left tackle. We just haven't had him. Like, we have not had a left tackle that's as good as this kid. Go pull up whatever, okay? I'm pulling up this game against Clemson. Tell me what you see that he could really do. And he's like, dude, what are you doing? You just ran into a sack. He's incredibly athletic. He's incredibly long. I think he's listed at 6'7", 323. Literally prototype left tackle, first-round potential. We just haven't had it, okay? I don't have a lot of minuses. I tried to pick something that showed you at least a couple of back-to-back plays. I don't have a lot of minuses. Again, I've watched a lot, okay, and I'm not some self-proclaimed, offensive line expert, but you can go and you can watch some things as well. I didn't really see him really ever mess up, and I probably watched 100 or so plays of his, okay? Like, run game, pass game, didn't matter. Again, he's really athletic. I think he's strong. I think he's good in the run game. I definitely think he's more of like a pass protector, like prototype. There he is pointing out the guy. Okay, he's sliding out on the extra edge pressure there. I mean, like I said, I've watched probably 100 plays or so, if not more, and I really can't tell you that I saw him do one bad thing. So he's going to be awesome. I hope he just stays for more than 1 year. All right, last and of course not least, Eric Singleton Jr., receiver, Georgia Tech. I believe he's still the number 1 rated receiver in the portal. He's awesome. I mean, if you're watching this, you've seen him play a number of times. The only things, I could say, his speed, like legitimate speed. I believe he's a 10-2 or so 100-meter guy. Like, he's a track speed guy. He ran track at Georgia Tech, if you didn't know that. Ball skills, as you watched this, he has great ball skills. Okay, he's listed at 5'11", 190, so he's smaller than Keandre Lambert-Smith. But, and I see a lot of people talking about Eric Singleton being a slot receiver. Like, Keandre Lambert-Smith wasn't a slot receiver. Again, I think Dre probably has 2 inches on him, but if you watch this, I just don't know that it matters that much. He's making contested catches. It's not like corners are all 6'4", okay? So I think he can play the Z, which is what Keandre plays. So you think about Cam Coleman in the boundary. You think about Eric Singleton, to the field where he can, use his speed to stretch and take advantage of that. And then Malcolm Simmons in the slot. Like, I think that makes sense. But I think obviously Eric can move around. But all these downfield shots, you can do that from the slot, but you're definitely doing that from the outside, from the Z position. So that's what I see. Obviously, he's got run after catch potential. There's a million different highlight videos you can choose. He had a lot of drags that he would catch something underneath, or screen plays, of course, and demonstrate his run after catch potential. Or if he's just roasting people on go balls, that's fine too. I don't know that he has the Jalen Waddle psycho jets. Okay, so I'll try to find some minuses. And obviously, if you wanted to ding him on size, I just don't think that matters that much. I actually comped him to Jaden Reed, who here's some run after catch potential against Georgia here. I comped him to Jaden Reed, who played at Michigan State with Peyton Thorne, and then who's a good player for the Packers. I was trying to just be creative and think about the best possible comp that I could. You can pick a lot of different guys, but I think Jaden Reed's a pretty good one because he's good contested catch guy for a smaller receiver. I think he's a good route runner. I think he's just pretty much good at everything. He's probably going to catch some, with his chest from time to time. Most receivers do. Smaller guys as well. Harder to catch away from the body. But, yeah, I mean, he's awesome. So super excited. Here's one more for the road, post shot. But, yeah, can't wait to see it. All right, so real quick to finish the episode, I have some superlatives. We can kind of see how this is, I've got some different categories here, but I want to run through this real quick. So biggest get of the class. And so last year I had my biggest get as Amaris Williams, which I put a little asterisk of because, he entered the portal and then came back. So, but biggest get, Deuce Knight, it's just, I think it means a lot in terms of even perception of like bringing in a 5-star quarterback and what that does for just perception. That's the biggest get, whether it was Ole Miss or obviously flipped from Notre Dame. It's just really important to get, I think, a quarterback in each class, even though, look, transfer portal, we just saw Walker White leave. Who knows the actual on the field, meaning. But biggest get to me, Deuce Knight, okay? The surprised it was us. I've got 2 for this category. You've got Anquan Fagans. I kind of said, like, that's a Bama safety, okay? Like, obviously Charles Kelly, I think, did a lot for us there, who's left to go take the head coach job at Jacksonville State. But that's an Alabama DB if Nick Saban is still at Alabama, I think. So the fact that we got him, I'm surprised it was us. I'm surprised you took a guy like that, and he's actually going to play football at Auburn. It's awesome. The other guy to the transfer portal, Xavier Chaplin. We, like I said, we haven't had a left tackle like that, like probably maybe ever. I mean, Greg Robinson was, 2 or 3 overall pick, but didn't project as well to the NFL because he was kind of a guard, interior guy, not as good of a pass protector. I think Xavier Chaplin could end up being, I don't know, man. When I watch him, I just don't see what's wrong with him. So I think he's going to be great. Next, we've got most loyal. Malik Autry, okay, so I think he was the first commit in the class, or at least he was committed maybe 2 years or so. Florida, some other people, Ohio State was involved there for a little bit, but definitely most loyal. Again, a guy we've talked about him, but I think for most loyal award, I could have him there for sure. Okay. Next, we've got the best recruiter. I had Walker White this category last year, LOL, right? Because he's transferring out. Alvin Henderson definitely wins this award. You have some other guys, Ryan Gee, some other guys that definitely could, have contributed to our recruiting class here. But Alvin Henderson, definitely number 1 here for this category. Best win, I've got 2 again. Jared Smith out of the high school. Just in terms of apparently it was down to the last night. South Carolina probably pushed really hard in terms of NIL, things like that. But really good to win him. And then Singleton, I mean, it's one of those where it's like you definitely could have lost and you could have been okay, but to win it, I think it just pushes you over the edge of what your possibility is for this next season. And same can be said about Jarrett Smith. He's definitely a guy that needs some development, but he could end up being, his ceiling is just so high that he could end up being, a first round pick type of guy. So that's a really good win. Beat UGA. We had this last year with Joseph Phillips. So the Beat UGA award is Eric Winters. Georgia wanted him, okay? We beat him. We beat Georgia for him. In-state kid, obviously, and a guy who, like I said, I expect to play pretty soon. So really good win for us on Eric Winters. The Stand on Business Award, I've got 2 linebackers, Elijah Melendez out of the high school class, and then Xavier Atkins, who we talked about out of the transfer portal. 2 guys that just to me, I would not want to see them, one-on-one in a hole, or of course outside of football, in a situation where I had to go up against them. That'd be terrible. So those are the 2 guys that stood out to me. There's some other, winners you could put in this category, but those are the 2 stand on business guys for me. Sleepers, Blake Woodby again. I think he's a 5-star on ESPN, but he's still a little bit under the radar to me. As a national recruit, I think he's going to be potentially our most consistent, other than Anquan Fegans, our most consistent contributor from freshman until he leaves. And then another guy, Rayon Strader, just because, he's Miami, Ohio, transfer portal. He's a little bit still polarizing for me in terms of I think it could go either way. He could never see the field, or he could be a starter to the extent that he kind of makes a shift around people in the defensive back room. So those are the 2 guys for the sleeper category for me. I had a can't wait to see play category last year. I can't even remember who I had, but this to me just goes for the whole defense. You think about Anquan Fegans, Jared Smith, Elijah Melendez, even your portal guys, your Xavier Atkins, Antonio Coleman, uh, Chris Kelly. I mean, there's just a bunch of guys. Bryce Diaz. Uh, I mean, Eric Winters, go on and on. I just can't wait to see those guys play. Whoever that is in year one, I can't wait to see him on the field. It's going to be a lot of fun. Biggest miss, you got to go Neem Offord, who went to Oregon because apparently Phil Knight gave him a shoe deal, which is insane. In-state 5-star. You probably know who Neem Offord is, Jordan Crawford's teammate there. The other guy, Third Scroggins, okay, who went to Miami, reminds me of Ruben Bain in terms of just like, man, he's really good off the edge. And Ruben Bain is a stud at Miami. Definitely a first-round pick whenever that time comes. Third Scroggins, to me, when you watch his tape, looks really, really good. And a guy that we had a shot with at one point. So that to me was another big miss other than Neem Offord, just because I think, that we see C.K. Murray coming in from Sam Houston, some of these guys. I think we could have used a guy like Third coming in this class as a buck. And then year one impact, just like, sure thing. I got Anquan Fegans. If there was one player in this class from the high school ranks specifically that, I would take the most money from me on a bet to contribute and make a big impact, it'd be Anquan Fegans for sure. Dude's a stud. Can't wait to see him play. It's been an hour and 15 minutes. Gone through everybody's video, superlatives, all this kind of stuff, ranked everybody basically from, 0 on. I think we brought in 30-something people between the high school ranks and transfer portal, so almost 40-something kids, I think. But yeah, really excited. Obviously, there'll be a lot more to get to, but hope you enjoy the episode, and see you next time.